The winter meetings just wrapped up, and we need to talk about what's happening with the Dodgers because there are some major developments, some rumors getting squashed, and some new names entering the conversation. Let's break down everything you need to know heading into the weekend because the offseason is far from over, even if things are about to slow down with the holidays approaching. First, the big news that's got people talking. The Byron Buxton trade is dead, at least for now. There was serious momentum building around a three-team deal involving the Dodgers, Red Sox, and Twins. The framework had Buxton coming to Los Angeles, Jarren Duran also heading to the Dodgers from Boston, Joe Ryan going from Minnesota to the Red Sox, and the Twins receiving a package of prospects from L.A. It made sense for everyone involved. The Dodgers get 2 impact outfielders, Boston gets rotation help, and Minnesota restocks their farm system after selling off a third of their roster last season. But Minnesota Twins GM Jeremy Zoll just put the brakes on everything. He came out and said they're keeping their core intact. Byron Buxton, Joe Ryan, Pablo Lopez, nobody's going anywhere. Now, whether that's posturing or genuine, who knows? But right now, that 3-team trade framework is off the table. The Twins took so much heat from their fan base after trading away so many players that maybe ownership stepped in and said enough is enough. You can't keep gutting the roster and expect fans to show up. For the Dodgers, that's a blow because Buxton would have been an incredible addition. When healthy, he's one of the most dynamic players in baseball. Elite defense, speed, power, the complete package. The problem is staying healthy, which has been his Achilles heel throughout his career. But if you're the Dodgers with your medical staff and resources, you take that gamble every time. Same with Jarren Duran, who's a Southern California kid with controllable years left on his deal. He'd fit perfectly in left field and give you another weapon at the top of the lineup. But now that deal's dead. So the Dodgers are back to exploring other options, which brings us to another interesting development. The Mets are reportedly interested in Tarik Skubal. That's significant because the Mets have the financial firepower to compete with the Dodgers, and they might actually have a better prospect pool to offer Detroit. The Tigers aren't trading Skubal without getting an extension done first. Nobody's giving up franchise-altering prospects for 1 year of a pitcher, even one as good as Skubal. The Mets are in desperate mode right now. They've had an absolute disaster of an offseason. Edwin Diaz signs with the Dodgers. Pete Alonso goes to Baltimore. Brandon Nimmo gets traded. Jesse Winker leaves in free agency. They've lost key pieces and haven't replaced them with anything meaningful yet. Juan Soto's first year was a disappointment, and now they're scrambling to salvage the offseason. Skubal makes sense for them. He's the kind of ace that can stabilize a rotation and give them credibility. But again, it's going to take a massive prospect haul and a contract extension to make it happen. For the Dodgers, this creates competition. If the Mets are serious about Skubal, they can match or exceed any offer LA puts on the table. That drives up the price and makes it harder for the Dodgers to get a deal done without gutting their system. We'll see how it plays out, but Skubal to the Mets is now a legitimate possibility. Now let's talk about Teoscar Hernandez because his future with the Dodgers is a major question mark. There are reports that Kansas City is interested in acquiring him, and honestly, that makes sense for both sides. Teoscar is 33 years old, still has pop in his bat. He flirts with 30 home runs and 100 RBIs every year, but his defense in right field is becoming a liability. He's at that stage of his career where he's better suited as a DH or moving to left field where the defensive demands are lighter. The problem for the Dodgers is roster construction. If Teoscar moves to left, great, but then you need someone to play right. If you trade him, you're losing a bat that delivers in big moments. That 3-run homer against the Phillies in the NLDS, that was a backbreaker. Teoscar has a knack for coming through when it matters most, and that's hard to replace. Plus, he's a clubhouse guy. 2 World Series rings, veteran presence, beloved by his teammates. Those intangibles matter. But here's the reality. Teoscar has 2 years left on a team-friendly deal, which makes him attractive to teams looking for short-term help without long-term commitment. The Royals are in win-now mode after making the playoffs, and adding a bat like Teoscar's could push them over the top. For the Dodgers, if they can get value back, maybe a reliever or a defensive-minded outfielder, it might make sense to move him. One viewer comment that caught my attention suggested Luis Arraez as a potential second base solution for the Dodgers. That's fascinating because Arias has won 3 consecutive batting titles with 3 different teams: Twins, Marlins, Padres. Think about that. 3 straight batting titles, but nobody keeps him. That's a red flag. Why does a guy who wins batting titles keep getting traded? Last season, his average dipped to 292, which is still solid, but that was a career low for him. His bat speed was the slowest in baseball, and defensively, he's a liability. The Padres had him playing first base because second base was too much of a challenge. For a team like the Dodgers that values defense up the middle, I'm not sure Arias fits. Yeah, he can hit, but can he hold down second base defensively? Probably not. And at 28 years old, which is shocking because he looks and plays like he's been around forever, you'd think he'd still have athleticism, but it's already declining. Second base is still a position of need for the Dodgers. They have Tommy Edman, who's capable but not a locked-in everyday starter. They re-signed Miguel Rojas, who can play multiple positions. Jesus Luzardo is in the mix, but there's no clear-cut answer. Names like Brendan Donovan from the Cardinals or Jose Lara from the Rays have been floated, but nothing concrete yet. The Dodgers might end up going with a committee approach or making a smaller trade to address it. The Edwin Diaz signing is already getting rave reviews. 3 years, $69 million to be the closer. That's a massive upgrade for a bullpen that needed a true shutdown arm at the back end. Diaz had a rough 2024, but when he's right, he's one of the most dominant closers in baseball. The Dodgers are betting that a change of scenery and their pitching development staff can get him back to being elite. If that happens, this bullpen becomes a legitimate strength heading into October. One comment mentioned the Dodgers lineup getting old, and that's a fair point. Freddie Freeman is 36, Teoscar's 33, Max Muncy is 35, Mookie Betts is 33. That's not ancient, but it's not young either. The Dodgers need to start thinking about injecting youth and athleticism into the everyday lineup. That's why someone like Jarren Duran would have been perfect. But with that deal dead, they'll have to look elsewhere. The offseason is about to slow down with the holidays approaching. Teams take breaks, front offices aren't as active, and things generally quiet down until January. But the Dodgers still have work to do. They need clarity on the outfield situation, whether that's keeping Teoscar, trading him, or signing someone else. They need to finalize second base. And if they're serious about Tarik Skubal, they need to put together a compelling offer before the Mets or another team swoops in. This team is still a championship contender. The rotation is elite when healthy. The lineup has enough firepower to compete with anyone. The bullpen, with Diaz now anchoring it, has the pieces to hold leads in October, but there are still holes to fill, and the front office knows it. Andrew Friedman doesn't sit still. He's always looking for ways to improve the roster. And you can bet there are conversations happening behind the scenes that we won't know about until a deal gets done. The Byron Buxton situation stings because that felt like a perfect fit. A dynamic player who could have changed the complexion of the outfield. But if Minnesota doesn't want to trade him, you move on. There are other options out there. The Skubal pursuit is still alive, even with the Mets entering the picture. The Teoscar decision will define how the outfield looks heading into next season, and second base remains a question mark that needs answering. What I love about this offseason is that the Dodgers aren't standing pat. They're active, they're aggressive, they recognize they're in a championship window, and they're doing everything they can to maximize it. Not every move will work out. That's baseball, but the intent is clear. This front office is trying to win now, and they're willing to spend money and trade prospects to make it happen. So enjoy the weekend. Let the rumors simmer. Let the holidays slow things down. But when January hits and teams start making moves again, expect the Dodgers to be right in the thick of it, because this roster isn't finished yet, and Andrew Friedman has more tricks up his sleeve. The winter meetings are over, but the offseason is far from done.